And so, friends, let's begin the program. So, Nell, if you could start us off.
So welcome, everyone. My name is Nell Ostrom, and I'd like to welcome you to our third gathering of Lineage Stories. So Lineage Stories is a series of online events that began last fall. And the intention behind Lineage Stories is to connect practitioners like ourselves with the roots of our practice and where it comes from. And so we're doing that through a series of dialogues with prominent North American insight meditation teachers. So it's an opportunity to hear from our teachers, their stories, their memories of their teachers, which are often rooted in Asia, their early days as Dharma students. So the Lineage Stories project has been supported by IMS Online and offered by Sangha. And I'll now introduce the working group of the Sangha. And with myself, I'm Nell Ostrom, and I'm with the Two Rivers Insight Meditation Community in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And I'll just move to the west of me now to Saskatoon in Saskatchewan, and ask the representative from Saskatoon to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeannie Corrigal, guiding teacher for the Saskatoon Insight Meditation Community, and I'm really delighted to be here with you all.
Thank you, Jeannie. And now we're moved to Calgary, Alberta.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carmen Wyatt from Calgary Insight Meditation Society. And if you hear some hopping and woofing and leaping, it's because I have a puppy with me who likes to join me whenever I'm online. So I apologize for that if you hear a little extra noise from her. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Carmen, and your puppy. Okay, and now we move to Edmonton.
Hi, everyone. My name's Stacey Campbell, and I'm a member of the Edmonton Insight Meditation Society. So big welcome. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Stacey. And lastly, there's one person missing from our group today, Chris Gilboy from Regina, Saskatchewan, who's also a very valued member of this group. And now I'd like to hand it over to Carmen to do a land acknowledgement.
Thanks, Nell. So in Calgary, where I am right now, spring is kind of just staggering in. But every morning we can hear the birds singing away and the flickers rat-a-tat-tatting on our vent pipes on the roof. And when you find a sunny side of a hill, the crocuses are just starting to poke themselves out of the ground. So just want to take a moment to appreciate the season, appreciate the land where all of this is taking place, and acknowledge the original inhabitants and caretakers of this place, wherever you are, and the presence of their descendants and knowledge keepers and elders who carry their traditions and their heart connection to that place today. Where I sit on the prairie at the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills, this land is the ancestral home and traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Arhi, Nakota Nations, the Otipemisiwak Métis government of the Métis Nation in Alberta Region or District 6, and all the people who make their homes in Treaty 7 in Southern Alberta. So in the spirit of truth and reconciliation and reciprocity, I honor and respect these nations.
Thank you, Carmen, for doing such a lovely acknowledgement, and I'm glad to hear that the crocuses are out. I'm from Calgary, I don't know if I'm living in Edmonton right now. I'm not sure if I've seen any here. I don't know if we have them this far north, but I'll keep my eyes peeled. Just extending the warm prairie welcome to everyone, and just a few logistical items. So if you're having any technical difficulties, Liz has offered to field some of those questions. You can send her a direct message through the chat. That would be great. Otherwise, if you have a question for one of the teachers, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll keep track of them, and we'll try to fit in as many as we can at the end. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a wonderful time.
Thank you, everyone. And it's just so sweet to be a part of this Prairie Sangha, offering this together. I feel really connected across the provinces, so it's really lovely. And also really lovely to be connected with IMS. It's the spiritual kind of home for many of us, where we, feel connected to. And so I feel really fortunate to be able to have this kind of this heart connection across the miles. And so we want to really thank IMS Online, and Liz is our host tonight. Liz Hamblett, thank you so much, Liz, for your care and holding us together here so beautifully. And I also want to bring in Andrea Grazina, who is here from the Saskatoon Insight Meditation Community. She's going to be supporting also technically the gathering tonight. So thank you so much, Andrea. She's Saskatoon Insight Meditation Community's Dharma leader and a tech guru. And then also I want to recognize Malin Rosen, who's here on the call tonight, and who is putting together for all of us a virtual lineage tree of the teachers who we've been hearing about. So very soon we'll unveil the lineage tree. It'll be on the website. And so I really want to thank Malin for putting that together. And so, friends, in the first year of this lineage project, we've been looking at our Burmese lineage, primarily at our Burmese lineage. So we have two major lineage streams that we have on the prairie. The Burmese lineage with Mahasi Sayadaw as the grandfather of that lineage, Mahasi, who opened up meditation in Burma to the lay people. And also then we have Thai forest lineage as another major lineage that we feel the influence of. And we have spent the first two sessions and now this session, so our first year, exploring the Burmese side. And tonight we have two more teachers who are going to help us explore this in new ways tonight. And these two colleagues of mine are very rooted in this tradition, and they teach a very special retreat together with other colleagues at IMS coming up the end of May and early June, 2 weeks in the Mahasi Sayadaw method. And so they're really carrying this lineage, this method forward. And so tonight they're going to share more about it. And so I want to introduce each of them, and I've already said that they're my beloved colleagues. We went to teacher training together at IMS from 2017 to 2021. And Roxanne Dault is from Montreal. So she's our Canadian sister. And let me see here now. I need to read my notes now. Okay. Roxanne teaches in, of course, across Canada, across the US, and also in France. And she's dedicated herself to this path for 2 decades, sitting long retreats in the West here and also in Asia with many teachers. And she's one of the guiding teachers of True North Insight, and hails from Montreal, as I said. She was mentored and invited into teacher training by Joseph Goldstein and Pascal Auclair. And her teachings are mainly rooted in the Mahasi lineage and are also influenced by her love of nature and also by Indigenous wisdom. And she's trained in somatic experiencing, which is a body-mind approach for really bringing mindfulness approach to trauma and stress. And she's just a lovely sister. So lovely sibling in the Dharma. And Tara Mulay began her extensive mindfulness practice while working as a criminal defense lawyer or criminal defense attorney, which she did for 20 years. And then in the early years of her practice, she received instruction also in the Mahasi tradition from Sayadaw U Pandita, as Roxanne did as well. And as well, of course, they have many other teachers as well. And Tara teaches extensively at the Insight Meditation Center in Barre, Massachusetts, and across North America. And she's a guiding teacher at the Spirit Rock Meditation Center. She's been a leader of Mission Dharma in San Francisco, and in 2016 co-founded the San Francisco Black, Indigenous, and People of Color Insight Sangha. And she's South Asian, so Indian American, and that gives her a particular root in this tradition, which I feel is a real gift to us. And she has a statement on her website that I also want to bring in that I feel is so powerful. She says she felt an initial motivation to explore Dharma practice upon encountering the Buddhist teachings rejecting caste as a measure of worth of capacity for awakening. And I believe, she says, that classical Buddhist practices designed to cultivate compassion, non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion are uniquely potent vehicles for empowering people in marginalized communities and affecting social change. So friends, we are so blessed to have Tara and Roxanne with us tonight. And so we'll have Tara is going to lead us in an opening meditation. And then we'll have some stories.
Thank you so much, Jeannie, and thank you so much to all of the representatives here of these prairie sanghas. Wow, from Calgary to Edmonton to Regina, Saskatoon, Manitoba. This feels very sweet, and I'm deeply appreciative for all the work that's gone into presenting this series. So, as Jeannie said, we're going to talk about lineage, a lineage that's rooted in the teachings of Mahasi Sayadaw, and actually his teachers as well, of course. And so, for this meditation that we'll be doing, I want to guide us in a relatively classical, be short, 10 minutes, but provide you with some classical instructions that are modeled after Mahasi's own instructions. As always, there'll be some adaptations, but I'm going to try to keep it a little bit classical for you in the Mahasi style to give you a sense of how he taught. So friends in the Dharma, one of his first instructions was to be comfortable in the meditation posture. It was actually to feel comfortable in the body, in the posture you've chosen. That may be sitting. He even mentioned the possibility of lying down. So finding the body posture that supports you and inviting in a sense of comfort and ease in the body. He also explicitly instructed practitioners to begin by extending metta towards themselves. That is loving kindness, a simple wish for your own well-being. He specifically invited practitioners to contemplate their wish for well-being and for peace and wellness for all sentient beings, and then to make sure to include themselves in that wish. He said to begin with the extension of this metta towards oneself by wishing oneself freedom from enmity, disease, and grief. So you may wish to extend metta towards yourself in any words, in any way that resonates for you. For me, I often like to just wish for myself, may I be happy, may I be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. And returning again to invite comfort into the body and recognizing this as an act of loving kindness towards oneself, towards myself, towards yourselves. May the body be at ease. And just noticing if this wish, this intention for ease actually allows for a softening of tension in the body. And so now that we have connected the mind, the awareness with the body, I invite you to begin in the classical way, tuning into noticing the experience of the breath. Mahasi Sayadaw specifically invited practitioners to notice the breath in the area of the rising and falling of the abdomen. So if that's accessible for you, I invite you to notice the in-breath and the out-breath as experienced in the rising and falling of the abdomen. If that's challenging for you to notice, you can put your hand on your abdomen to get a sense of the sensations of the rising and the falling. It's important to notice the actual felt sense, the shifts and changes in the pressure, the sensations of the body as the abdomen rises and falls. To actually feel the rising and the falling. And you may use a light, gentle note, rising, falling. But even as you are noting internally, the most important thing is to actually feel sensations of the body breathing. And Mahasi Sayadaw recognized the mind may wander, the mind will wander, in fact, he said. And when that happens, we must not disregard that experience, but rather notice it with mindfulness. And again, use a light, gentle note. You may simply note wandering, wandering, and then gently return to noticing the sensations of the rising and the falling. All kinds of experiences will become known as you're attending to the rising and the falling. It's important to be mindful to notice each of these again with a light, gentle note. If the mind is imagining, planning, thinking, fantasizing, just dropping in a gentle note, aware that this is happening when it's happening, not thinking that this is the wrong object for the meditation, that you should only be attending to the breath. No, Mahasi Sayadaw said it's important not to disregard these other experiences that the mind knows as it's aiming to attend to the rising and falling. So just noting, thinking or planning, remembering, and gently returning to notice the sensation of the rising and falling for however long the mind is able to attend and notice the sensations of the rising and falling. As soon as something else is known, with a light, gentle effort, just dropping in a note, recognizing that that experience is present and being known. And then returning gently to notice the sensations, the direct felt sense of the rising and the falling. You can also use light, gentle notes. When the mind's awareness lands on experiences of the body other than the rising and falling, perhaps itching or burning, or a sense of softness, coolness. Recognizing that this is present and being known with that light, gentle note, itching or cool, soft. Experiences of pleasant or unpleasant can also be known in that way and noted. Oh, this experience is pleasant or unpleasant. It's impossible, especially in the beginning, to be able to notice and note everything that's arising, everything that the mind notices other than the rising and falling. So Mahasi's instructions were, just notice those things that are most obvious and perceivable. So just make just the effort that's needed to remain present and aware of either the direct felt sense of the rising and falling, or other experiences that become quite obvious and easily perceivable. The mind has wandered off in a story, could notice story is happening. And then as the story fades away, Returning again, noticing the shifting and changing sensations of the rising and the falling. Not getting caught up or worried about whether the note or the label you're using in your mind is exactly accurate. A general or generic label can be used, just thinking or sensing, hearing, feeling. Being gentle, remembering the intention of loving kindness for ourselves, which means we do the best we can in this practice and let that be enough. Landing on the sensations of the rising and the falling. When other experiences become predominant, obvious in our field of awareness, we just allow them to be known, to be the object of mindfulness for that moment, knowing that anything is a perfect object for this mindfulness practice. And when that experience then is known, noted, which means felt, and known with awareness, and it dissipates, we then gently return to the rising and the falling. Let the breath be natural. Let the rising begin just on its own, naturally flow, and end just on its own. And let the falling be natural. If you notice any internal attempt to control the breathing, to control the rising and the falling, simply notice this experience. And you can use a light, gentle note, controlling or efforting. And just allow that experience to be just as it is. No matter what is being known, what is being noted, we are allowing and accepting that experience to be just as it is in this moment. We are dropping our habit of tuning out what's happening right now and of trying to make it otherwise, trying to push it away, trying to hold on, or just noticing. Just feeling the present moment's experience. Using a light, gentle note when possible. And as I ring the bell to bring in close to the meditation, I invite you to just gently flutter the eyes open and let your eyes take in the light. Let your eyes take in the sights and acclimate to the present moment with others.
Thank you so much. So beautifully settled. Thank you so much. And we were going to begin earlier with Roxanne and Tara also offering a land acknowledgement. So let's go back there. And so Roxanne, could you slide in with that?
Yeah. Mm. Thank you, Tara, for this beautiful meditation. Yeah, a lot of settling. It's very, I feel very excited to be practicing with you all and a lot of fellow Canadians. It's rare to have this opportunity to practice representing the East Coast here. I'm in Montreal, Jojage, the land of the Kanien'kehá:ka, and also land of gathering for many First Nation, including my ancestors, the Anishinaabe, Algonquin, the Huron-Wendat, and many First Nations. So I feel that this is an important gathering that we're all together. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, honoring all those First Nation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. And Tara, would you like to bring in the land where you're at?
Well, I'm in what's called Berkeley, California, but this is the unceded territory of the Ohlone. I live very close to a sacred shell mound here and really honor the heritage and the peoples and the elders who are very much a part of the life here in Berkeley, the land of the Ohlone.
Thank you so much. Oh, beautiful. I'd love to go around and hear where everyone is from. It's so beautiful to honor in that way. The land who is really an ancestor for all of us, and also support us as our sangha, as our extended sangha in so many ways. And so I'm going to begin asking a few questions of our guests. Tara, you've practiced with Sayadaw U Pandita at the Panditarama Forest Monastery. And so I wonder if you could tell us a bit of, draw us a picture, paint us a picture. I think you brought some pictures with you. How did you get there? Tell us that practice and where you practiced and how you got there.
So I got there because I was determined to get there. I practiced for about 6 years or more. getting instructions from various places, teachers, and they were good. Mindfulness, really, the practice was very compelling for me. It was freeing my heart and mind in ways that were compelling me forward. And so I continued to practice, but at a certain point, I was introduced to the teachings of Sayadaw U Pandita, who was one of the main disciples of Mahasi Sayadaw. And I was introduced to those teachings by my community teacher and the teacher I consider to be my root teacher, primary teacher, Howie Cohn. And I know he has some connections here in Canada. He's come to a number of places in Canada over the years. So I at one point sought him out for some individual practice guidance. And for whatever reason, because I don't think he usually does this, he encouraged me. I think it was because I was doing some writing about my meditation, but he encouraged me to write out in a reporting style similar to that used by Mahasi Sayadaw and his lineage teachers in his lineage, including Sayadaw U Pandita, to practice in that way. And he told me about Sayadaw U Pandita's book, In This Very Life, in which Sayadaw U Pandita gives very simple, very short, very, in my view, helpful instructions. And I followed those instructions and I did what Howie said, and my practice deepened very quickly. My experience was of really dropping in and opening up. The insight unfolded in a way that really kind of took me by surprise. And from that point on, I continued to follow those quite simple instructions, actually. And because of the way in which that really supported my practice over the course of years after that, and as I did more and more retreat practice, I really wanted to go and practice with Sayadaw U Pandita. I wanted to go to one of the monasteries that he had established. And there are many of them, and each of them, they're called Panditarama, each of them. They're in many different locations. But I went to the Panditarama Forest Monastery. This was in 2016. And so, Andrea, could you bring up the slideshow? And the first slide is of Sayadaw U Pandita himself, so you can get a look at him. He may have been a photo or two of him in previous sessions, but here he is. And so this is Sayadaw U Pandita, and he was 94 when I went to practice at the Panditarama Forest Monastery. At that point in time, he was giving Dharma talks on a regular basis at the age of 94. So he gave a Dharma talk basically every night. He wasn't individually interviewing students, however. So that's Sayadaw U Pandita. And the next slide will be one of the pictures of the forest monastery there. So you can see that it's quite a beautiful place. And it has many buildings there in the forest monastery. This is very near Yangon, the capital. It's actually in Yangon district, the capital of Myanmar. And so what I did was, when I wanted to practice with Sayadaw U Pandita, I looked online, how do I apply? Every year up until recently, they would have actually a foreigners retreat. It's a 2-month retreat specifically for teaching foreigners. And so I applied to spend some time on that retreat, and I had to, fill out a visa application, etc. Meditation visa. You could get a meditation visa. I don't know about now whether you can do that. It's probably still possible, but due to the civil war, the military oppression in Myanmar right now, it's really not advisable or very possible for many practitioners to go there and practice. But at that time, that was what I did. And I got on a plane and I flew to Myanmar and got picked up at the airport and went to Panditarama Forest Monastery. So there's another picture, the next slide. Andrea, this is the dining hall that you would walk to every day, and for the 2 meals of the breakfast and the lunch. And the next slide is another picture of Panditarama Forest Monastery. And this is the bridge that I had to walk across from the area where the women practitioners' kutis were to the meditation hall for women that's at Panditarama Forest Monastery. And so every morning, the next slide will be a schedule that we had to follow at Panditarama. Every morning we wake up between 3 and 4 and then I would walk across that bridge to the women's meditation hall and practice there beginning at 4 o'clock, beginning at 3:30 with walking, and all the way you can see to the night. So it was a full day of practice. And again, it was during this foreigners retreat. So actually there, the foreigners who are mostly there are, and it was a beautiful experience of being with a lot of women practitioners from all over Asia. The vast majority of practitioners were Asian women. Some of them were bhikkhunis from, for example, Vietnam. They were in Mahayana traditions, but they were coming to this Panditarama center to practice in the style of Mahasi Sayadaw. There were women from Singapore, women from Taiwan, women from China, and there were a few Westerners, including myself. So that's how I got there. And that's a little sketch of what I did and what I saw. And just to, I think, actually, Andrea, you ended that. Let me just bring in the pictures of the teachers who kind of led me there, because there's a picture of Howie and a picture of Deepa Ma, and just do that right now. Right, so I had teachers who were influential. So this is Munindraji on the left, and Kamala Masters, who's my current teacher, and one of my current teachers. And they were both, so Kamala sat with Sayadaw U Pandita. Munindraji sat with Mahasi Sayadaw. He taught her, and so on. So it's this lineage going down through generations at this point. And the next slide is of Joseph, I think. And Deepa Ma sat with Mahasi Sayadaw and was a teacher of Joseph, and Joseph now is a teacher of mine that I interview with. And the next slide, I think, is Howie. And Howie also sat with Sayadaw U Pandita. So that's Howie Cohn. All right. Thank you, Andrea.
Tara, thank you so much. And you're right, Howie is well known in Regina here and Edmonton and also in Saskatoon. He's been in all three of those communities, and I think he leads the Wednesday night group frequently right now in Regina. And so, Tara, we're starting to get used to, I think we're starting to get the hang of the intergenerational movement here. So Mahasi Sayadaw, Sayadaw U Pandita, Deepa Ma, Munindraji, Joseph, Tara, and us. So these stories are becoming ours now. And so, Tara, thank you so much. It's lovely to see the setting that you were practicing in and have a feel for it. And so, Roxanne, you also practiced in many places in Asia, and you practice now with Sayadaw Vivekananda, who is a student of Sayadaw U Pandita, student of Mahasi Sayadaw. And so can you tell us a little bit about where you practiced with Sayadaw Vivekananda and Sayadaw U Pandita? And I think you've got a slideshow too. And maybe we could come back a little bit. Maybe you could tell a little bit about, and then come back to the big group. I'm not sure how we can come back and forth with your pictures. You just direct, Andrea. So.
Yeah. And maybe we can start. There's a first picture, Andrea, of Sayadaw U Pandita with Sayadaw U Vivekananda and Sayale Ubadamanika. So this is a picture of them when they did the inauguration of Panditarama Lumbini. And the next picture, there's a picture of me with Sayale, who's my dear teacher. And I think after that you have Vivekananda, who's there. Yeah. So maybe we can just come back and I'll share a bit, and then we can come back to pictures of this beautiful place. But I was supposed to go practice at Panditarama Lumbini in 2012, but I made a stop in India, and I was supposed to go to India for a month. And as you know, went to the Bodh Gaya, and kind of fell in love with the spirit of practicing in India and stayed there. But there was a calling to go and practice with Sadhu Vivekananda, which I had heard was a great teacher, and was really moved by Sadhu Pandita and the way that he offers the teaching. And a bit like Tara, I had a deep calling for the Mahasi method, which I learned at the beginning of my practice, and I'll say a bit more later on. But I, in 17, actually went to Panditarama Lumbini, and Lumbini is the place where the Buddha was born. So it's a very sacred place. You arrive there and you feel the energy. There's temples, there's people doing pilgrimage. So it's quite moving to be practicing on this land. We arrived we didn't have a lot of time, so we went directly to the monastery. I was there with Victoria Carey, another teacher that teaches at IMS in Spirit Rock. And so didn't get a chance to visit, but we were practicing in that field, and we could hear people around the monastery pilgrimage, and it was quite moving to be there. And Sadhu Vivekananda and Sayali Ubadamanika, Burmese nun, they really touched my heart in a deep way. This practice, as Tara was talking about, is a practice that invites, noting a sense of continuity and in some way sense of discipline. But they had so much heart in the way that they were transmitting the teaching that I really felt moved practicing with them. So I think we can show maybe just a few pictures of the monastery there. So this is me at the end of my retreat, happy yogi. And after that, you can see the beautiful center that Sayale puts a lot of love, and having beautiful flowers on the ground. I think after that, you have a picture of the path. So this is one of the walking path that actually leads to it's not a big center. I think there's maybe 25 or 30 yogis maximum. So it's quite intimate, and people go there for practice for long periods. I was there for a month when I went, but people could be there for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. And it just reopened recently because it was closed during COVID. And then after that, there's a picture of the mosquito nets. So I was there during the warm season, and there was a lot of mosquitoes. And so we would practice underneath. Each of us had our own mosquito to really be protected. And in some way, I really felt it gave a sense of being surrounded by the Dhamma. In some way, the mosquito, that was quite an interesting thing. I think maybe in where you practice Tara, that was also there. It was the first time experiencing those mosquito nets. And this is me in front of the place where apparently the Buddha was born. So quite a sacred place where people come in and have pilgrimage. And after practicing with them, I continued practicing in different ways from distance with Sadhu Vivekananda and Sayali. And during COVID, I was planning on going back to Nepal, to Lumbini, to practice with them, but I actually did a 3-month self-retreat online with them. So I would meet every morning at 4 a.m. and have my interview. And one thing that's classical in the Mahasi tradition is to have daily interviews, daily meetings, to really keep your practice actually really focused. So you have to report back how is the practice going. So there's a lot of discipline needed in some way in this practice that really is really helpful. So that was my beautiful place that I practiced with. And I think after that, you have an idea of the schedule, which was similar to Tara's schedule, waking up at 4:30, not 4, like Panditarama. So a bit later. But I made myself a schedule, and I was very, I created the Panditarama here in Quebec on my own. I think there's a last picture of the just the view of the place. Yeah. So I would say maybe we can close now. I'll say a few words. And thank you. Sauda U Vivekananda and Sayale Upadamanika are my dear teachers, and I feel very blessed that we were able and to connect with them online. You know, I think this is another layer to the lineage tree of being able to connect with our teachers online like we are today. And to continue this tradition in so many ways. So maybe briefly, before that, I practiced also in Myanmar and Burma. I went to the Chaswa retreat, which is up north near Mandalay. I think there's a picture of the view, and I think you spoke about that in the previous session. This beautiful place, Andrea. Maybe you can show that picture that I brought. So here, when you practice there in the Saigon Hills, it's quite moving. And that's one thing in practicing in Asia is you can feel that you're part of a lineage, you know, part of the tradition. There's monks and nuns chanting very early in the morning and at night. And there's a sense of, you know, the tradition, and that we're, you know, a sense of deep Sangha that's there. So you can notice all those monasteries there. And the next picture, you can see me very happy in my small kuti that I had. And I think the last one is just sharing my teacher that led me there. So I practiced, so Pascal Auclair was a dear teacher that I think some of you know. I know he just taught in Vancouver recently, and really gave me the love for the practice. I had found a practice before meeting him, but having to have this practice being taught in my own language really moved me. And that led me to Joseph Goldstein, of course, and IMS, and Michelle McDonald, who was coming to teach at True North Insight, and I think teaches still a lot on the West Coast. And Michelle led me to go and practice in Myanmar. And it was kind of the teacher that gave me some direction in continuing practicing in the Mahasi lineage. And that led me to Sauda Vivekananda and Sayale after that. And maybe the last picture I'll show, or maybe it's not necessary, I think, very quickly. So that was actually the first retreat I did, and that was with in Wat Cham Thong with Ajahn Tong. If you show the next picture. Yeah, and I think we're good. There's a lot of picture today. So Ajahn Tong was actually practiced. So if we circle back, he practiced with Sauda Mahasi Sauda actually, and was in Burma and came back to Thailand and kind of created his own style of practice under the same, you know, aspect of importance of noting. And so that was the first place I practiced in Asia that really moved my heart. And I saw again the importance of having an anchor and having a place where the attention comes back, the rising and falling of the abdomen as a really a place of settling of the mind, very important. So that's a bit in a nutshell the story of my teachers, but it's moving to actually recall and think of that, just how many connection there is, and how, you know, one teacher influenced the other. And I know Pascal practiced with Sauda Pandita at IMS, and I know that Vivekananda was very young when he met Upandita, and it was actually at IMS. He told his mom, if I recall the story, that he wanted to go to India, and she said, no, you don't go to India. So she said, well, I'll go do a retreat at IMS in the US. And she said, okay, that's okay. But he met Upandita there and actually became a monk and moved to Burma. So it's so interesting how the many layers of connection that we have in this tradition. And yeah.
Thank you so much. You've really painted for us the network that we're a part of here.
Exactly.
And that's such heart that we get a real transmission of the heart as well. So thank you so much.
you.
Gosh. I wonder, Tara, if you could give us a sense of really the kind of the uh, overview of the Mahasi method that both you and Roxanne have dived so deeply into. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, so the Mahasi method, and we'll get to the background of it, which is quite fascinating. The method in a nutshell is classically, as he taught it, very similar to the way I led the meditation earlier, where you have what we often call an anchor or a home base. And classically, it's of the rising and falling of the abdomen. So many teachers have modified Mahasi's original instructions and adapted them in many ways that are really useful and helpful for people. And those include, like, for example, Munindraji, who was a student of Mahasi's, when he taught Joseph and he taught Howie and he taught Kamala, he taught, actually just notice the breath where you notice it most obviously, where it's most obvious for you, easy to connect with the breath. So that's a kind of a modification of the Mahasi instructions that have been handed down to a lot of practitioners. But with Mahasi, and in many Mahasi centers that you will go to now, will be noticing the rising and falling of the abdomen. And then when there are secondary objects that are more predominant, that arise into your experience, and you notice them and they're more predominant than the breath and the rising and falling, you notice them and you note them. You use a light, gentle note. It's important, though, that this note is actually, the note is not the practice. The mindfulness, feeling the experience, knowing the experience, that's the practice. The note is a tool to support the continuity of our noticing and to support the precision, the factors of vichaka and vichara, those are Pali words for directing the attention, vichaka, to an object, and sustaining the attention on an object. So perhaps the object is a sense of pressure in the rising and the falling. So noting pressure. Oh, that directs the attention and allows the attention to sustain on that experience. The mindfulness is actually feeling and knowing that experience. The noting is simply a tool to keep our attention steadily in a gentle, persevering kind of level of effort on our experience that's being known and noticed with mindfulness, and to support the precision and the continuity and the intimacy, the connection with the present experience in an ongoing way, to build the momentum of that experience of knowing our whatever may be arising at any sense door that becomes quite predominant for us. So the classical instruction of Mahasi Sayadaw is with this rising and falling as an anchor, noting other objects that become predominant, and then it's in all of our daily activities to also be mindful and note those experiences, the movements of the body in particular. You go from sitting to standing, you notice, you feel that experience of what it's like to go from sitting to standing, and you note standing. You reach for your fork as you're eating, and you note reaching, but you're feeling the physical sensation. The note is just to support the continuity of that mindfulness, to keep you connected, directing and sustaining the attention. And that's doing this as much as possible to build the continuity of mindfulness, which translates to concentration, momentary concentration, which is distinct from the concentration we build when we're just on one single object. But it's a building of concentration with different objects, the support of the continuity of mindfulness on different objects as they're arising in our experience. So what we're doing, so the aim is, so that is that noting the rising and falling, noticing other predominant objects and noting them, noting as much as possible throughout the day of our movements of our body and our activities. And we go slow in order to support that. That's another instruction that Mahasi gave. slowing down our activities to support that connection with what's happening in the present moment. So that's kind of a nutshell. And importantly, he really did say not to disregard other things, anything that's happening that is being known. Don't disregard it. Actually note it. Be present. Be mindful of it. So what that's all aimed towards is dropping our habit of greed, hatred, and delusion with respect to the present moment's experience. That we have that habit. We have that habit, and that delusion means we tune out on it, that habit of delusion. So we're supporting not tuning out, supporting actually being aware. We're also supporting non-greed, not wanting to hold on to the pleasant, not pushing away the unpleasant, actually noticing whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neither. We're there for that experience. We're allowing and accepting it to be just as it is, and we're aware of it. This is all in the service of letting go of greed, hatred, and delusion with respect to our present moment's experience, opening to allowing it to be just as it is. It also helps us to just drop the stories, to have that ongoing bare attention awareness. Drop the stories about what's happening and actually noticing at a non-conceptual level what's happening, actually feeling the experience of what's happening in each present moment. So that's kind of a nutshell. The nutshell of Mahasi could be described in a few different ways. And as I said, those instructions are modified in many different ways. You'll go to centers that are Mahasi centers in various different parts, even in Thailand or in Myanmar, and they're using different kinds of instructions, sometimes with touch points they're drawing your attention towards. But the aim is always to support the cultivation of these qualities of mind that give a certain continuity of mindfulness, a precision, a surrender to just noticing what's arising and dropping greed, hatred, and delusion with respect to it. So that in each moment, Mahasi said, if we're doing this practice, we are practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, all factors at that moment. Wise view, wise intention, all the purification of conduct factors, and wise mindfulness, wise effort, and wise concentration. That's what he says, builds the practice and allows for an unfolding of insight.
Woo!
Sadhu.
For that transition, Tara. Friends, we've heard about the Mahasi method, we've known about noting, but this put it into a wonderful package for us to understand. And I'm going to ask Roxanne in a minute, because you'll have your own way of describing it, Roxanne, and you might have like a different perspective. But then I've got a follow-up question for both of you too. But beautiful, Tara, to have this nutshell, developing these qualities of mind, by that, and qualities of mind of Vitaka, Vichara, in order to connect with this moment, in order to let go of clinging. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Roxanne, is there anything else you want to bring in before I ask you the next question?
I think one aspect that Tara mentioned that I want to maybe emphasize is the importance of slowing down. When you practice at Panditarama, when I show the walking path, that could take half an hour to walk, because we were really, really wanting to really be connecting with this sense of continuity of present moment awareness. And when we're noting, we can also, bring some focus in the intention, intending to stand up, intending to reach, the moment before we actually reach the arm, can we notice the intention? So it's really dropping in, every moment, can we notice every phenomena that are unfolding? And sometimes when we hear that might feel, a bit like a lot. There's so many things happening. But in some way, Mahasi was really asking us to come back to the simplicity of each moment. It needs to be very light. It needs to be gentle. It really is just like knowing this hand. Joseph often brings this, can we just know the hand right now moving in the air? It's very simple. It's not hard. It's not, I have to be with the hand. No, we know it. So this simple knowing, can we know the experience that's happening in this moment? And then we kind of refine the attention, knowing the intention to move, to, you know, there's always an intention behind all that is unfolding. So we can actually drop in as the concentration deepen in practice and really know that. No, Mahasi was really saying, you know, whether good or bad, small or big, the student must contemplate every state of mind, every body sensation. And when there's nothing special happening, pay attention, your full attention to the rising, falling of the abdomen. I deeply appreciate the simplicity. I don't need to, where should I bring the attention? Okay, come back, know the abdomen rising and falling. And when I started practicing the rising and falling, you know, the abdomen, there was not a lot of sensation actually down there that was happening. Was I really breathing? And there's something about bringing the attention down through this area that actually also helps us to connect to the full body. So there's a lot of preciseness, but coming back to the simplicity of meeting each moment through the body, but also know, as Tara was saying, noticing all activities that are unfolding. Yeah.
Beautiful. Roxanne, what would you say for yourself is the biggest teaching you've received from this method?
Yeah, when we were chatting before, and Sarah mentioned it a bit, the sense of surrender. And when I was practicing in my self-retreat, at one point, Sayale kept on repeating to me, you know, trust and surrender, trust and surrender. And I think in this practice, there is this invitation to really surrender to each moment, and a deep trust in your own capacity to do that, and a deep trust in this path, in this lineage, in your teacher, in the Sangha. So there's a way of kind of dropping into each moment that felt very important for me in my practice. And again, the sense of simplicity that I mentioned, I think sometimes when we talk about noting, it can feel complicated, but it needs to be very, very simple, very gentle. Again, yeah, I think that's what comes up for me.
Yeah, we were talking earlier. Was this what you were meaning when you were saying some practitioners can get caught up in the noting as a kind of a clunky practice, but to
Yeah.
stay
Yes,
through
yes. Sometimes the noting, it can feel very busy in the mind. It's like adding to what's happening, but there is really this invitation. It helps us to actually connect to the experience. You know, the noting is very, very soft, and we're really actually wanting to be in the experience. We're penetrating what's happening, and the noting is just helping us to stay connected to each moment. So it's very soft, you know, maybe we can say, you know, 80% is, or 90% is with the felt sense of the experience, and the noting is very soft in each moment. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Tara, what would you say would be one of, would you say would be one of the biggest teachings that you've received from this method? Maybe similar.
Yeah, it is similar in that it's about surrender and simplicity. Really a deep exploration that happens, and the joy of that deep exploration of learning more and more what it's like to actually be in an ongoing relationship of acceptance and awareness, full acceptance of whatever's happening. Really deeply learning that this practice and awakening is not about obtaining pleasant experience, but about being aware of what's happening right now, no matter what it is. So for me, one of the moments when I felt this, I don't know, that exemplifies, I think, my relationship to this practice and how it's been so helpful for me as a some practice guidance I got from Joseph Goldstein once. And so I was practicing in a 3-month retreat at IMS, and Joseph was one of my practice teachers. And some, as happens, some afflictive emotions were coming up. And in that case, for me, some fear was coming up in the practice. And I went in to speak with Joseph, and I was talking to him about the fear that was happening. And he said, "Oh, are you able to be mindful of the fear?" And I said, "Yes." Of course, I've been practicing for so many years. Able to be mindful of the fear. And he said to me, he just looked at me and he said, "Are you really okay with it, or are you just tolerating it?" So then I had to deepen again in the practice and see, how could I be really okay with what's happening right now? Really just aware, accepting, just noting, oh, fear is here, without adding a story of, it's bad, I don't want it to be here, it shouldn't be here. This is just what's happening right now. And this is where, even as you practice, at times the noting falls away because you're just so you can get such momentum in this practice that it just goes on and you're just noticing things, you're really connected on. But even as time goes on, that noting can help to keep you there and present with something that's really quite unpleasant otherwise. So it's really it's an ongoing relationship with building a real okayness and awareness with what's happening. It's simple, but you have to keep on going with it. And there is a delight that you begin to notice happens when you do drop that relationship of greed, hatred, and delusion with what's happening right now. So that delight keeps you going because you can feel the freedom of it.
So Tara, what you've said is so important because there's people on this call, of course, and all of us at some point will be facing really, really unpleasant, difficult, challenging, very serious experiences. And so seeing those experiences as a part of the practice, as an opportunity for deepening in the practice, for surrender, for being with fear and having a wise relationship to it, that's really, so this practice can really hold us in everything that's happening. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and really strengthen the deep intuitive wisdom and the knowing it's not me, myself, or mine. When it's here, it's just a rising and passing phenomena. And then that's how we can begin to really build equanimity and greater freedom in relationship to that experience. Because we see, even if it's unpleasant, it arises and passes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. In the midst of this, Roxanne, how does metta connect here?
Yeah, metta, I think is really important in so many ways and needs to be part of all that we're doing. And sometimes, and I think Sharon spoke about that, we can do the very precise metta practice and really dedicate our practice towards that. But I think with the Mahasi, instruction, there is a way that we need to really bring in the metta, the warmth of metta in everything that we're noticing. When you were mentioning, going through difficult mind states and difficulties in our life, as you were mentioning that, I recall when I had a big car accident a few years ago, and I felt so blessed that I had this practice because I could meet the physical pain, but also, the mental struggle of a concussion and being with that and actually noting the sensation, noting the thoughts that were coming, and that was filled with a sense of metta, of okay, I can be with that. Because as I mentioned before, there needs to be a softness, a warmth in meeting each moment. If there's a harshness, if there's a striving energy, if there's a pushing or forcing energy, we're going to exhaust ourselves. It's going to be too much. it's not going to be good for our mental health. We need to bring space, warmth, and kindness and metta. So metta is really, really important to cultivate sometimes as a particular practice. And when I went to Panditarama and Lumbini, just before that, I had done a month of metta. So I was coming with a mind that was filled with loving kindness. And I really noticed actually just the kind of ease that came with noting, because there was already kind of a field in the mind that was full of metta. So we can't really, I wish we could also do a month of metta before going in practice, but it's not like that. But how can we actually bring this warmth as we practice? I think it's so important to have that in all the activities that we're doing. And particularly, I think with this method, we need to really bring that forward.
You, anything to add to that, Tara?
Yeah, the metta in the Mahasi method is just baked right in. It's the baseline that we need to approach every experience of the practice with. And I did find it so helpful I mean, I went back and I looked at Mahasi's classical written instructions, which you can access online really easily by Googling them, and was reminded of a few things, including that he said in those written instructions, begin with metta for yourself. And so it's what's beautiful about this practice is I think it will show you as you practice and as you go through some of the clunkiness that happens with the noting, you do make too much effort, or either you do fall into harshness. It shows you that you've fallen that way. So there's a trial and error kind of process that's built into the practice where you do kind of get too harsh for yourself, and then you see the pain of that, and it teaches you over time how to actually be really, really very gentle. There's some noise in the background, don't know what it is, but it teaches you how to really be very gentle. It shows you what gentleness, like gentleness beyond what I could imagine, honestly.
Thank you. I love that. It's baked right in. And to begin with it. So thanks. So Tara, another one of Mahasi Sayadaw's real revolutionary teachings is about the jhanas, that they're not needed for insight. So can you describe more closely what this means? Because we're all...
Yes, so there's a fascinating background and a fascinating role that Mahasi's instructions kind of play in the overall Theravada tradition. So just to kind of go back and say, before Myanmar was colonized by the British, throughout really the whole world of the Theravada teachings, meditation was really something that was reserved for a very few people who were ordained, and it was generally believed that you had to be able to practice be able to attain very deep absorption concentration states in order to then practice and experience insight leading to wisdom and realization and nibbana. And so these jhanas, these deep absorption states, were now today there are kind of ways in which people are teaching them that people might find them to be more easy to enter into those ways of describing the jhanas. But classically, these are states where you're completely cut off from the senses. These jhana states, you can't actually hear. There's no thought that's happening. You're very, very deeply absorbed by practicing with a singular object. Your mind is there's a unification of mind that happens by practicing with a single object over and over and over again, awareness of that. Then you switch to an insight practice. What happened is that the British colonized Myanmar, and all of the people of Myanmar felt they had to save the Buddha Sasana, Buddhism, because the British exiled their king, who was supposed to be the protector of the Buddhasasana. So all of the people of Myanmar came together, and one of the things that arose out of that was that some of the monastics were intent on teaching the laity how to meditate, to make it more accessible for people to meditate and for people to experience insight. So Mahasi Sayadaw, who was born in, I think, 1904, and so the colonialism started in 1885 in Myanmar, and then in 1948, independence happened, and even after independence, that was then really there was a lot of cultural momentum for this spread of meditation to lay people. So throughout that process, Mahasi Sayadaw developed this technique for practicing insight, building what he called momentary concentration, which is concentration on diverse objects, different objects. So being aware continually of different objects in a way that had such momentum that there was strong concentration present, called momentary concentration, different than that jhana concentration. And this noting practice and the continuity, the slowing down, as we've described, the simplicity of that practice, the bare attention over and over again, support the development of that momentary concentration that can lead to insight without having to spend tremendous periods of time intensively practicing with single objects for jhana absorption.
Well, that was a big freeing of the practice for lay people, and huge.
Yeah. And it's had massive impact. Actually, all of us, there's no way that we would be practicing in this way if it wasn't for the spread of insight practice being available to lay people. The first group meditation for lay people that was held was in Myanmar in 1911 by Mingun Sayadaw, who was Mahasi Sayadaw's teacher. So we are the beneficiaries of all of that.
You feel a little gratitude for that. Thank you. Thank you, Mahasi.
Yeah.
Roxanne, anything to add?
No, I think Tara said it beautifully.
Well, so much. Really puts our practice in perspective, doesn't it? And incites a lot of gratitude. Roxanne, I wonder if we could, if there's a story about Sayadaw U Pandita or Sayadaw Vivekananda about practicing, just what personal story, what it was like to practice with your
I didn't get a chance, unfortunately, to meet with U Pandita. I wish I had, but he passed away not so long before I was supposed to go there. So, but yeah, Vivekananda is such a dear teacher, and there's so much love for the practice, and I think U Pandita had that. That's what I heard from Joseph, kind of that deep love for the practice, and really wanted people to awaken, So there was a fierceness in the way that he was teaching that you can feel in his students. So Sayalay and Sayadaw Vivekananda, they are fierce in a way that they actually really want us to practice and be diligent and bring discipline, but also again with that kind of warmth and kindness that is needed for that practice. So I think when I think of Vivekananda, I really think of a teacher that really wants the best and kind of ask of us to really keep moving forward. And when I was practicing in solitary in the self-retreat, I was alone in a place that I didn't know that, at one point there was a lot of fear the first few weeks that I was there, but he was just very kind and very supportive, meeting with me and saying, more mindfulness is needed, more mindfulness is needed, and I really trusted him. So that there's a field of trust that you can have with Vivekananda, because he's so enthusiastic about the instruction, about where you are, and kind of supporting you on your unfolding. And it's you can feel it, you can resonate with that. So when I was practicing there and he kept on saying more mindfulness, there was really a moment when I saw kind of the power of mindfulness that helped me to actually let the fear kind of dissipate. And we were talking at the end of that 3-month retreat, about me being there alone in the woods. And he said, I was very, very scared of you being there, but I had so much trust in the Dhamma that you would be protected. But I was very moved that he was, there's a lot of care and warmth for his students. He really wants them to be well. And yeah.
Thank you. It's nice to get that transmission from you. And Tara, do you have a story for us about maybe Sayadaw U Pandita, you from that time, or any other teacher that really, feel moved or inspired by?
Yeah, Sayadaw U Pandita. He really, really wanted people to wake up. He really, really wanted the yogis to have the opportunity to wake up. He had tremendous compassion in that way. And that took the form of really reminding people in very pointed ways to continually to be mindful in every moment. So, and just remembering him. So he was about 3 months away from his death, 94, and he was giving a Dhamma talk every night in the hall. And for example, one evening we went into the hall, and it was maybe about 100 yogis there, quite a few monastics, and every day Sayadaw U Pandita would be given a ride up to the door on like a kind of a cart. He'd be given a ride up to the door. All the yogis will generally have been seated in their places, waiting for the Dhamma talk, and he would walk in through the side door and go up to his seat, and he had a palpable presence and very, very mindful. And so this one particular evening, he got up to his place to give his talk, and he opened his mouth, and what he said was, "When I walked in today, I saw a yogi sit down unmindfully." And my mind was going, "Oh, it had to have been one of the male yogis. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It can't be me." And then he anyway, this is the way in which he would really urge us to follow the instructions, practice with as much continuity as we could. And it drove home for us the importance that he placed on doing this practice with a lot of commitment, with surrender, as we keep saying. Surrender to just being mindful as much as you possibly can. Notice each movement. Notice each experience. And he didn't have to do this. There was literally nothing in it for Sayadaw U Pandita. He was a monastic, gains nothing from this. But till the day he died, basically, he continued to give as much as he could to other human beings in the service of supporting them in waking up.
Wow. I really thank you, Tara. That just kind of makes me sit up straight. And it makes, it really also brings in in a way, what are we here for? In a way, a friend, our purpose to offer compassion as a purpose that can be offered in every moment until we die. That's a life call for all of us.
And he said, "I consider you brothers and sisters in the Dhamma." Like, he made it clear, I want you to wake up.
And you can really feel that from like his student, that Sayadaw Vivekananda has that same deep, commitment. And, he and Sayale, they run the Panditarama Lumbini since the opening, and they teach every day. They offer instruction or Dharma talks, and they meet every students, mostly every day. That there's a deep commitment in waking up. And I think all the Panditarama or this tradition, it's really about that. There's a deep calling for waking up. That's okay. I have to do the work. Yeah.
It does inspire you to show up, doesn't it? It does inspire you to rest into the practice, does inspire you to surrender in. Thank you. All right, and maybe I'll just ask one more question of Tara, and then we'll close. Then Tara, I just want to circle back to your what for me seems another kind of call for me, the sense of the practice as a powerful practice for social change, and for empowering people in marginalized communities. Can you speak to that a little bit more? How is this practice such a potent vehicle in that way?
Sure. Well, I think it's interesting to just reflect again back on the fact that this particular practice came from anti-colonialism, that it has that root of empowering marginalized people. But there's a few ways of describing this, but one of the things about this practice is that it will show you ways in which your thoughts might limit you if you believe them, right? And we've been handed a lot of those, our patterns of thinking, emotional patterns, habits of mind that limit us, hold us back. Those come from conditioning, and they come from conditioning from society, which is fraught with systemic manifestations of greed, hatred, and delusion, including racism, including casteism, including homophobia, transphobia, these kinds of things. And when we have that conditioning and we practice, we can start to see how we're actually those internalized patterns, the conditioning that's there, and start to break free from them. Because once we start to see those just arising and passing thoughts, we don't have to identify with them, this emotional pattern, start to see how it's causing suffering internally, we can cut through those. So I think this practice has a unique ability for people to start to free them from conditioned patterns that can come from those systemic manifestations of greed, hatred, and delusion. I really believe that there are things that were handed to me from society that I feel like I've been able to at least chip away at the hold that they've had on me. And I've seen this with many other practitioners where can start to free the heart and mind from that. And that's the foundation, really. Us individually freeing ourselves and getting together, and then being able to act out of wisdom and compassion more collectively. That's where the engine for social change comes from. I was just listening to a monastic, Sri Lankan American monastic from Michigan, Bhante Sati, who was interviewed recently on YouTube, and he was talking about how he practiced in the midst of the war in Sri Lanka, and the way in which, what he did was spend time with children whose parents had been killed in the war. And he knew he went and traveled, and he had a government car for that, and people knew he was doing that. And so they supported him, they didn't shoot at him. And then when they actually somebody shot at him, those people actually came to him and said, "We're sorry." And they knew they could do that because they knew he was a monastic and he wouldn't actually harm them. He wouldn't actually lash out at them in any way. When you start to interact with the world in a way that you're spreading loving kindness, you're spreading compassion, you're meeting each moment with more of that wisdom and compassion, you have an impact on people, and we can have impact together. So that's what I mean by that. But it requires really practicing with these qualities, not just, as Bhante Sati, it's not about labels, whether you're Buddhist or not. That's not what it's about. It's about how are you meeting this moment? How are you meeting the other beings and yourself in this moment?
And what we do in this moment, no matter what situation we're in, makes a difference. Thank you so much. I wonder if we could close by asking each of you what you're most grateful for in the practice. And while you think about that for a moment, I'll just let folks know if you have any questions to put them in the Q&A chat box down below, and Stacy will monitor that. And so maybe Roxanne, would you like to start with what it is that you feel just most grateful for in the practice?
As you ask that, I'm just so grateful about the practice. To
Okay.
have as as a as a path in this life. There's so much complexity in being a human being, in navigating the craziness of our world. I feel grateful that all of us have this practice that, as just Tara said, to really support us and help us help each other and awaken from the craziness of our minds and the world that we create around us. Um, and I feel like this particular method, the teaching of Mahasi Sada really, gives us again the simplicity and the preciseness of the instruction. Really kind of really helps us to kneel down. I don't know if you can say that. Sometimes I have a French expression that comes in my head, but to really get the, hit home of being in the present moment. So yeah, that's what's coming up right now. But so many things to be grateful about this practice.
But for the practice itself. So
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe while Tara is thinking about that, I'm not sure we'll have questions. We may have covered all the questions, friends. And so, oh, we do have maybe a question. Okay. I had a question for the group if we didn't have any questions, and that is just what are you grateful for? And so that may be a way for us to close tonight. And we just put that in the chat. But Tara, go ahead.
I'm grateful for all of you here. I'm grateful for the way in which we can connect around what's real, what we really experience as human beings. That was not accessible to me before the practice, really connecting with people. And that's Sangha element of the practice. And I'm grateful, really, very much so, for the understandings of not self that have opened through the practice. Very liberating for me.
Beautiful. Now I'm going to join in too and offer gratitude, and then we have a question in the chat, and then maybe we'll open it up to other gratitudes. But I feel, I was like a very fearful person before I met the Dharma, and anxious and fearful about many, many, many things. And so one of the great things I'm grateful for is the growing capacity to be present without fear, or with a wise relationship to fear and a wise relationship to anxiety. And so, gosh, I'm so grateful for that. When I think back on when I didn't have the practice, oh my goodness, it just brings a waterfall of gratitude. Yeah. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So Stacy, I think we've got a question, and do you want to read it out to us?
You bet. We actually have two.
Okay.
Okay. So someone is asking is if it's possible to do this practice as a lay person without an individual one-to-one teacher, and also in the world as a lay person.
Maybe Roxy and Tara, you might each have something to offer on that, or
Yeah, yes, it's possible to do this practice. Uh, I think to have a teacher and to have one-on-one can actually be hard. It's rare in these days to find a teacher that's available, that's there for us. And um, I think going on retreats, being with Sangha, with community can really support you on your path. And I have, Tara mentioned this book, in this very life that I often, when I teach, I often have books just as a presence next to me, and sometimes just reading, the instruction, being inspired, listening to Dharma talks can really do the practice. I think Tara was mentioning in her own path story, doing the practice from this book and actually really diving into the unfolding, and yet at times it's good to have a teacher to support you and guide you and to and direct you in ways that are helpful, and ask questions. And there's ways of connecting with teachers, even if you don't have a one-on-one teacher that's always there for you, but there's ways of like moments like these, or when you go on a retreat or on a day long, when you can connect with a teacher, or if there's a sangha in your community, staying after the sharing and asking some questions. And also there's more and more people offering mentoring that you can actually connect with them and create actually a relationship. Often people ask us, at the end of a retreat, how do I actually meet a teacher or get to connect with a teacher? I think it's good to, go on retreat and hear their teachings and see if you resonate with them. And then see if there's a possibility to actually create a relationship. And that can look that can have many forms. It can be, meeting on a monthly basis, or maybe once every 6 months, or once a year. So there's ways that we can kind of find a connection without needing it to be very intimate in that way. That's what I have. Anything to add, Tara?
Yeah, just a little bit. You can do this in daily life. One of my teachers, Kamala Masters, likes to share the story of how Anindraji kind of taught her to do it in daily life. And she had 3 young children at the time. But, how does she practice in daily life? It was noticing what it feels like when she's doing the dishes, and then being mindful every time she walked down the hall, walking mindfully, noticing what the sensations of the steps when she would walk up and down the hall in her house. And then, what does the water feel like on your hands as you're reaching for the dish? What does that feel like? So maybe you're not noting, like all the time. And again, the noting practice is just when it's possible. But you're feeling, you're being aware, you're present, you're building that continuity of mindfulness with a gentle, persevering effort in daily life. And as Roxanne said, really, I think, sometimes it may be difficult or not possible to have an actual individual one-on-one relationship with a teacher, but you can have, many people can have, you can connect with Sangha a lot online or sometimes in person. Have some ongoing connection with the Dhamma is important through being with online sanghas and reading and listening to Dhamma talks. So keeping that going, keeping that flame alive for the practice, it just supports the faith and the confidence to keep on going. A lot of my practice was in daily life. I did a lot of practice in the law office that I worked in, honestly. So yes, not only can we really want to, because we want to infuse our life with mindfulness, do this practice in daily life. And, it just, in all of the Dharma practice, doesn't matter whether you're doing this particular technique or not, we need Sangha. We need spiritual friendship. We need to hear the Dhamma. We need it. It's essential.
Like a food. Thank you. I'm getting inspired. And Stacy, we have another question.
That. So I find for myself, I have a lot of self-judgment around what I'm feeling or whether I'm feeling the correct thing. This causes me some difficulty when I try to approach metta, especially bringing metta into every moment. Do you have any advice for how I can do this without bringing too much striving and self-judgment along?
today. I can answer a little bit and then ask Roxanne can jump in. So for many people, when there's a challenge with self-metta, which there is a lot, for a lot of people, challenge with metta for the self, we need to bring in the wise effort part of the path and cultivate metta by direct practice. So doing metta practice. And there are many, many ways, many kinds of instructions you can access for different ways of directly cultivating metta. If there's this pattern of self-judgment, which many people recognize, I really feel that that's necessary. We're not all in a Mahasi center with a baseline of self-metta that we can bring to every moment. It sometimes really needs to be cultivated for us. So we really need to do that practice and make it a conscious part of the practice. For me, I realized, and I've been beginning to bring into my teaching a little bit more, because I find so many people having an ongoing challenge with this pattern of self-judgment that just will come in, like judging oneself for what the feeling one is having right now. I mean, we can't change the feeling but somewhere in us, we've got the conditioning we're judging even that, judging what the body looks like right now. You can't change that. That's what it is. Judging what our emotion is right now. Wow, that's just what's happening. But our conditioning is coming in there. So, open to the possibility that, really explore deeply metta. There's formal practices using phrases, there's radiating practices. I like to invite people now to actually practice self-metta in the form of a question or questions. What would it be like to accept yourself just as you are right now? Just open to that possibility. What would it be like to be safe and protected from your own thoughts? What would that feel like? And in that moment, if you can sense what that would feel like, that's metta. You can sense what it would feel like and that possibility. That's actually metta. And then you start to know what metta for yourself feels like. See if you might incline the mind towards that more and more. So if you're finding yourself judging your feelings, maybe invite in the question, what would it be like to accept myself exactly as I feel right now? What is the possibility there? Can I envision it? Now, if you envision it, you're envisioning metta, self-metta.
Um, yeah, I think maybe sharing from a personal perspective, when I talked about this month of metta I did, it was actually Joseph that told me, for me, the real deal was wisdom and pushing a bit, forcing a bit, striving a bit too much. And there was this invitation from Joseph to actually really bring in the practice of metta. But I felt there was a lot of resistance that was coming forward, and it felt a bit very dry actually. And like Tara just mentioned, I think there's something in just kind of bringing in the energy of metta. So I would just drop in, may I be at peace. That was my phrase that I use every day, may I be at peace. Very simple. And coming back to, the simplicity of what you're meeting right now, the breath, may I be at peace. And this deep trust in the unfolding that's happening. And noticing, when resistance comes up, resistance is there, kind of bringing in, okay, here you are, my good friend, resistance or self-judgment. And like we would, a good friend or a child, we would kind of, bringing in and take care of it. And yeah, of course, there's resistance. Of course, there's self-judgment coming from, our deep conditioning. So kind of allowing that to be fully accepted. And again, not pushing that away and then dropping in, okay, may I be at peace. I really love what Tara just suggested, really bringing that sense of safety. How would that be? That's beautiful to kind of open to that. And also just to name that, again, like Tara mentioned, it's so much of us struggle with that, so many self-judgment, or we live in a world where there's so much, we need to be better, do better, be more productive. And so self-judgment comes very easily and metta doesn't. So it's good to just kind of name that. Yeah, of course it's there. Of course it's there. Kind of seeing it for what it is can be very, very helpful.
Mhm.
Not judging it, but yeah, it's there. Yeah, complex. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Thank you, Roxanne. So soft, so soft. And Meta, the way you've offered that, so beautiful. Thank you. Might be a good place for us to close here. Um, but I kind of put out there that we might close with people's gratitude. So if there are folks who have gratitudes, please put them in the chat, and we'll bring them in as we close tonight. Any gratitude for the practice, or gratitude for our teachers today, or gratitude for this gathering, whatever gratitude in the practice you have. And so we'll close. Also, Roxanne is going to offer a short meditation, maybe just a minute or two, and then dedicate the merit. And then I'll offer our great thanks to both of you. And yes, I see there's a few gratitudes coming in. So we'll offer gratitudes after the dedication of merit. Is that okay, Roxanne? Okay.
So just inviting for a moment the body to be known. And it can be very simple. So just in this moment, knowing the feet touching the earth, touching, knowing the posture of the body. Maybe there's a softening in the shoulders. And as Mahasi invited us, just knowing the rising and falling of the abdomen, connecting with the simplicity of the body breathing. There was many words shared today, so just inviting this connection with simplicity and this deep trust that this practice is there to support us. It might be a good moment just to set this intention for our practice. Honoring this lineage coming through our teachers for many generations. The blessing of the Buddha 2,600 years ago. It felt this deep call for compassion to share this practice so we can free our hearts. So may our practice together tonight and every day be for the benefit of all beings everywhere. May the merit of our practice tonight touch every heart in all directions. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May we all be at peace.
I want to thank you so much, Roxanne and Tara, on behalf of all of us. It's just been a great blessing that you've been here with us tonight. We really thank you so very much. And to add to my words, we have folks in the chat who said, I am grateful for the teachers today, from Tori. And it's going to read this actually as a collective thank you. I'm grateful for the teachers today. Thank you so much to the teachers and your time and stories tonight. Grateful for steadiness that practice offers. So grateful for the Dharma that has come into my life. It's given me so much peace and acceptance of myself and life journey. Bowing down in gratitude for these teachings and for this series, bowing down to all of our teachers. Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Andrea, and grateful for renewed joy and motivation to continue to practice. That's what you've given us tonight, Tara and Roxanne. Thank you so much on all of our behalves, from all of us to you.